We began, oddly enough, with preparing some pickled red onions, which are a delightful topping. So that'll involve 1 cup of water, a couple teaspoons of salt, a couple teaspoons of sugar, and a cup of vinegar of your choice, red wine, apple cider, white wine, whatever works. Of course, we have to slice up 1 red onion. You could certainly make a larger batch of this. They keep great in the fridge. Once that's done, we'll use a bowl, or a mason jar would be preferable, but I didn't have one. Add the onions, add your pickling brine, seal, and give it at least 1 hour in the fridge, but overnight is even better. They'll keep for at least a month. Alright, now for our barbacoa, we are going to require a 3 to 4 pound chuck roast. And yes, beef cheek meat is traditionally used for barbacoa, but since that's kind of hard to come by, we'll be going with this chuck, which we'll cube up into 2 to 3 inch pieces. Next, add a cup of water and some beef bouillon, or of course beef stock would work just fine, to a braiser or saucepan. Add in the juice of a lime, a couple of tablespoons of tomato paste, and do the best that you can to get that dissolved into the beef stock. Next up, we'll be adding 2 to 3 chopped chipotle peppers. You could definitely add more if you want it spicier, or leave it out if you do not want any heat at all. Gonna go in with a couple of teaspoons of dried oregano, a pinch, maybe 1/8 to 1/4 of a teaspoon of ground cloves, 2 or 3 bay leaves depending on their size, and just stir all of this so that it's well incorporated. With that done, we're going to go ahead and add our beef. And I know you're asking, why are you not browning it? We thought brown food tasted good and color means flavor. Well, just trust me on this one. Add that to your liquid, season it up with salt and pepper, and then the last 2 ingredients that we're going to need here will be 2 to 3 cloves of garlic, which you can honestly just throw in whole. This is going to cook for a while in the oven, and they will break down nicely, along with a small yellow onion that's just roughly chopped. If yours is large, just put half of it in. This is going to go into a 325-degree oven for about 2.5 to 3 hours until it is just fork tender, which gives us plenty of time to make arepas, for which you will need a special kind of flour, masarepa, which is a pre-cooked cornmeal. Add 2 cups of that to a bowl, pinch of salt, 2.5 cups of water, and just work this until it's the consistency of fine sand. I should mention that you can find masarepa at pretty much any supermarket, but if you're having a hard time finding it, you can always get it online or go to a Latin store. Once your dough has come together, you can start forming it into balls. The size of these is really up to you. I kind of like them a little smaller so they cook quicker and get crispy on the outside, but somewhere around the size of a lime or a small orange is probably good. And then just flatten that out into a disc somewhere between 1/4 to 1/2 inch thick. Once you've done forming your arepas, you're going to cook them over medium heat with a small layer of oil in the bottom of a pan. It's going to take, again, depending on size, anywhere from 5 to 8 minutes on that first side, another 5 to 8 minutes on the second side, and if they're starting to get a little too brown too fast, turn your heat down or just finish them off in a warm oven. Now, we turn to our elote, or street corn. Bring a pot of water to the boil, add a heavy pinch of salt for seasoning, and boil your corn for 7 to 10 minutes or until it is just tender. For our toppings, we're going to be using some cilantro, just a handful that's nicely minced, about 1/3 of a cup of mayonnaise, to which I will, and this is optional, add a little bit of Mexican crema because I had it sitting around, a couple tablespoons just to thin it out, but again, that's optional. Don't go out and buy that just to put 2 tablespoons in this dish. Crumble up some Cotija cheese. Once your corn is cooked, use the worst possible implement in your kitchen to get it out of your pot and drain it on a plate. And finally, we're going to add some butter to our cast iron skillet and sear that corn off to replicate a flat top or grill effect. I kind of went pretty hardcore there, but gotta be honest, that charred flavor was delightful. To make your street corn, first lather on some of that mayonnaise mixture, sprinkle on some chili powder. You can use any kind that you want here. I'm using a hot Mexican chili powder, but chipotle, ancho, or just regular old American chili powder would be fine. Sprinkle on some of that cotija cheese and roll the corn around in it. And finally, garnish with some cilantro or parsley if the taste of cilantro resembles soap on your tongue. And don't be cheap with it, by the way. Anyways, here's what our barbacoa or our chuck meat looks like after about 2.5 hours. It's looking okay, and it's pretty tender, but we want it golden, brown, dark, and richly colored. So we're going to put it back in that same oven, 325 degrees, for another 45 minutes or so. Are you ready for it? Oh yeah. That is what it should look like. I'm going to hit it with a little fresh orange juice. You could go fresh lime juice or skip this altogether, but I like the acidity. And then just start to shred it with 2 forks. You should have absolutely no problems with that. Once you've gotten your meat shredded, make sure to stir it around to get those juices reabsorbed, and of course, check for the bay leaves, which nobody wants to eat. At this point, we can go ahead and start to plate this up. So get your arepa and use a fork or a very sharp paring knife to just kind of separate it, leaving a nice pocket on the inside. You don't really want to take it all the way apart. Fill that pocket up with some barbacoa, some pickled onions, top with cotija cheese, and before we go in for a bite here, let's just talk about the flavors briefly. That corn is very sweet, the chili powder adds a smokiness, that cheese is tangy, and of course that herbal note from the cilantro is delightful. When it comes to these arepas, they are crispy and crusty on the outside, soft and warm on the inside, and that barbacoa is rich. Yeah, it's fatty, but it's also unctuous. There's a nice balance of flavors from all the citrus juices, the cheese, the pickled onions. It's really an amazing bite of food, and honestly, you can put anything you want to inside these arepas and it would probably be delicious, but this barbacoa is my recommendation. I literally just stood there and devoured this whole thing and was barely able to stand under my own power. So, get out of here and go make something like this delicious.